Stand by to fall in, Polk County. This is today's veteran. Hello and welcome, and on behalf of everyone at the Polk County Office of Veterans Services, thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Tim Kirkhart, and on this installment of today's Veteran, we chat with Christy Whitford about the Veterans Justice Outreach program. But we start off today's show with a look at Dependency and Indemnity Compensation, DIC. That's a monthly benefit paid to eligible survivors of certain deceased veterans that include eligible survivors, monthly rates, additional allowances, and the application process. Joining us in studio is Dr. Yuli Cho, Director for the Florida Department of Health in Polk County, Major John Haynes from the Florida Veterans Foundation, and Mike Mason, also with the Florida Veterans Foundation. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tim.
Well, let's get right into this. Mike, what is a service-connected disability?
Well, a service-connected disability is a physical or mental injury or illness that a veteran either incurred or aggravated during his active military service.
Okay, Major, what would you say, you could tell us what DIC means?
Dependency and Indemnity Compensation. It's a tax-free monetary benefit paid to eligible survivors of military service members who died in the line of duty, or it can be for eligible survivors of veterans whose death resulted from a service-related injury, wound, or condition, or a disease.
Okay, Mike, tell us why you gentlemen are here today.
Well, basically, Major Haynes and I had been going over some issues that we're coming across, and we'd been receiving a lot of surviving spouses that had come in where the veteran has passed away, and they were not receiving their DIC benefits. So we started to dig into it a little bit, and it just was not happening. In one case in particular, we had a lady that her husband had died 10 years before in another state, and she comes to us and she said she asked if there were any benefits back then for when her husband passed away, and she was told no. He died of natural causes. But as we got into it and we started to look at the history, her husband was actually service-connected for ischemic heart disease, which, he died of a heart attack, and they had it on the death certificate that he died of natural causes. So we contacted the doctor to see if he would change the death certificate. He says it was 10 years old, so we basically refused. So we took it another step and contacted a comp and pen doctor from James Haley that had previously worked at James Haley. And she wrote a letter stating that the ischemic heart disease that this veteran was service-connected for was absolutely a contributing factor in this veteran's death. So what we did was we were able to argue a point, and they gave her an extra and a lenient decision, adding one more year of benefits to her. So she got back pay for like a year and a half of benefits. But as Major Haynes and I, we were at the Veterans Service Council in Tallahassee, and we presented this, and they were very happy that she'd received her back pay. But the issue was that for 10 years, she had to get up every morning and make a decision whether to buy medication or food. And that's the issue we're trying to address here. Let's solve this problem. Let's do the best we can and work around it to get the problem solved and get our our surviving spouses the benefits that they're due.
Okay, so you got involved with Major Haynes?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then in the lobby of our office, I presented the problem to Dr. Cho and enlisted his assistance, and Dr. Cho just happened to be one of the few other doctors that we're aware of that used to be a CNP examiner. So Dr. Cho understood exactly what we were talking about. So it's great having an asset like that right in our office.
So Dr. Cho, it sounds like you have some VA experience behind you.
As Mike mentioned, I did serve for a short period of time as a physician evaluator, a comp and pen physician. And I am intricately familiar with the process. Mike presented that this was a problem, and we wanted to come up with that solution. And it's all about collaboration, just getting together and trying to address this issue, and really preventing that example that Mike gave from ever happening again. So the Florida Department of Health, working with the Polk County Veterans Association, working with the Florida Veterans Foundation, as well as other key players, such as Lisa Mackel. She's the local Chief Deputy Register. As well as Ken Jones, who's the state registrar. We've got together, we've been on multiple calls to come up with campaigns and initiatives to address and educate the public on terms like service-connected conditions and DIC.
Okay, Major Haynes, please tell us what a veteran should do to make sure the surviving spouse is eligible for DIC.
The veteran should make absolutely certain that the VA rating letter is presented to the doctor who is treating the husband, and we'll cover this a little more in depth in a few moments. Tim, if that's all right, I'll explain more about the rating letter.
Why don't you go ahead and tell us about the rating letter?
Okay, the rating letter is one of the most important documents that a veteran receives after he has been rated by the VA. This rating letter tells him precisely what the VA rated him for, tells him why he was rated, and it tells him the percentage of compensation that he will receive for that particular ailment or injury. But I think the most important thing is what the veteran does with that document after he receives it. The veteran, I think, first of all, should make absolutely certain that his wife, his family, or anyone in his estate has a copy. Any treating doctors should have access to that document. It should be presented to them. And in particular, if a veteran is in a critical stage of treatment, maybe he's in hospice, his death is imminent, that is the time that the widow or the next of kin should make absolutely certain that the doctor does, in fact, have that document so that he knows what the veteran has been rated for by the VA.
Okay, I'll tell you a quick story here that I had a widow who came in to me, and her husband was service-connected for diabetes mellitus. She came in with the death certificate saying natural causes. And I said, what did he pass away from? It says natural causes. She said he had a heart attack. The doctor who signed the death certificate was a hospice doctor. And so I explained DIC to her, and I said, can you go, it was like within a couple weeks, I said, could you go to the doctor who signed, see if he can change the death certificate or add a contributory cause? And she did, and he did, and we sent it to VA without a formal, just a pen and ink change, and they awarded her DIC based on that. So
See, that's good. But, you know, a lot of times they don't bump into somebody like you.
Sure.
And you know, that's the problem. If they don't have good qualified people to answer those questions for them, then it becomes an issue. And that's why we try to cut it off and make sure everybody's aware of it. And I know in our office, we've got a bulletin that says, you know, service-connected injuries. All veterans, please make multiple copies of your VA rating letter and pass these on to every non-VA physician that you see. And from then on, we've also developed, with Dr. Cho's help and Ken Jones, we've also developed a flyer that basically explains service-connected disabilities and why it's so important that the doctors understand them, the funeral directors understand them, and also the family understands how important that is. So we've been working in Polk County quite hard to get this problem solved.
Tim, if I could intercede here just a moment, there's one other very, very important step that I consider vital to this whole process. And that is that the veteran, before any problem occurs, should educate his family. He should get a copy of the VA Form 21-534-EZ, and he should fill that out in advance. He can fill out everything on that form, and that form is where the widow is applying back to the VA after the death of the veteran, where she's applying for the DIC compensation. But he and his wife together should fill out that document, because it's a very complicated document and there's a lot of supporting evidence that goes with it. And if he will have that form filled out in advance with everything included, with the exception his date of death, I hope the widow doesn't know that date of death, then everything will go so smooth if the veteran does pass away suddenly or in the hospital, because the form is all complete, the accurate data is there, and it's information that probably the widow might not know. I filled out one claim for compensation that the widow presented. The veteran had been married 7 times, and all of that information has to be included in that request form, and the widow had no idea who these former wives were, why the marriage ended, what date it ended. So to make it simple, do the work in advance, fill out the form while the husband is still living or the veteran is still living, and it makes it so much better.
As a veteran service officer, I tell the elderly veteran and the spouse about DIC and widow's pension, to have them ready to have the doctor make sure they put the right thing on the death certificate, because that's so important. Well, it sounds like you gentlemen have addressed the issue and attacked it from all sides. Thank you for your service, and thank you for continuing to care for our veterans and their families.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me here.
Thank you very kindly.
Dependency and Indemnity Compensation, DIC, is a tax-free monetary benefit paid to eligible survivors of military service members who died in the line of duty, or eligible survivors of veterans whose death resulted from a service-related injury or disease. You can apply by filling out Form VA 21-534-EZ, which is the application for dependency and indemnity compensation, death pension, and accrued benefits by surviving spouse or child. If available, attach copies of dependency records. For more information on the process and forms, go to www.va.gov. We will be back with more of today's veteran after this.